This is the third part in our series on the water cycle. In this part, we're going to talk about the carbon and the oxygen cycle, which are cycles that you might not have actually realized that you know a lot about, but you probably do. So let's go ahead and get started. We have in ecosystems, the processes by which carbon and oxygen are recycled are linked. So in ecosystems, the processes by which carbon and oxygen are recycled are actually linked together. Now thinking back to when we studied food webs or food chains, those producers that make their own food, consumers have to eat a food source and cannot make their own food, and also decomposers that break down organisms play roles in recycling carbon and oxygen. So let's talk about the carbon cycle first. Producers, like plants, algae, some bacteria, take in carbon dioxide gas from air during photosynthesis. The carbon from the carbon dioxide is then used to make food molecules. Those could be sugars or starches. And the consumers, like ourselves, then eat the producers and take in the carbon-containing food molecules. The consumers then break down the food molecules to obtain energy. So just like we would eat, let's say pizza. Pizza comes from a plant, wheat. The consumers, us, will then break down our food molecules, that pizza, to obtain energy. So when you think about you eating lunch, you eat lunch to give you energy, and your body uses it for energy. Because those things that you're eating come from plants and they're carbon-containing food molecules, then whenever it breaks it down, you have carbon dioxide and water that are released as waste products. And when producers and consumers die, the decomposers break down their remains and return the carbon compounds back to the soil. So let's take a look at the carbon cycle. We know that the producers take in carbon dioxide, CO2, gas during photosynthesis. And then the carbon from carbon dioxide is used to make food molecules like sugars and starches, which can be used in different types of food products that we eat, for example, pizza. We know that consumers like ourselves eat producers and take in those carbon-containing molecules. And as we eat the pizza, our body breaks down that pizza to obtain energy. And because we've broken that carbon-containing molecule down, then we have carbon dioxide as a waste product, and also water vapor. That's a waste product that's given out into the atmosphere when you exhale. And then that carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere to complete that cycle all over again. The next cycle is the oxygen cycle. Now, oxygen cycles through ecosystems just like carbon. Producers release oxygen as a waste product. So producers like plants will release oxygen as a waste product. Now, most organisms like humans need oxygen. So we take in oxygen from the air or sometimes from the water and use it to carry out their life processes. So most organisms like humans take in the oxygen from the air and use it to carry out the life processes. So let's take a look at the oxygen cycle. You know that oxygen is released as a waste product from producers. So there's the oxygen that's out in the air. Mammals inhale that oxygen, so that oxygen is going inside that mammal. And then oxygen is transported to the muscle cells through the blood. It's pumped by the heart, and it helps your muscles move your body. As carbon dioxide is generated when oxygen is used, and then it's exhaled as a waste. And so you have carbon dioxide exhaled. Those plants need the carbon dioxide to make their food and photosynthesis, and then they release the oxygen as a waste product for them, and that cycle continues. The next cycle that we'll talk about is the nitrogen cycle. And in the nitrogen cycle, nitrogen moves from the air to the soil. So nitrogen moves from the air to the soil, into living things, and then back into the air. So if we take a look at a nitrogen cycle interactive diagram, you could trace the nitrogen through the farm and see how important it is for plants and for growing crops, and how a farmer uses that. So make sure that you go through the nitrogen cycle interactive diagram so you can follow through the nitrogen cycle. There's also the cycles wrap, which is an interesting way to review all of the different cycles that we've been looking at within this unit. So the carbon cycle, the oxygen cycle, and the nitrogen cycle will be covered on this one. If you need to replay anything, go ahead and rewind, and thank you for listening.